Good question. So how does it fit into transaction analysis, the parent-adult child? How does that fit into what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 5:17, that we are a new creation? That's right, katesis, creation, not creature, creation. And so how does a new creation fit into this? That's a good question. I don't think it's talking about the same kind of thing. In my view, this is analyzing, and I have no problems for me using the word psychology, much like physiology. I don't think physiology is against the Bible, but I don't know if the Bible tells me anything about how to heal a broken leg. So I will go to a person who's studied how the body works to tell me what's the best thing to do to help it heal. But in the Christian worldview, I would say I think God's all about healing. He's also about us using our gifts and being a good steward of our gifts to help people. I also think we have the moral duty to try to help people when we can. So there's a motivation and there's a worldview in which physical medicine occurs. I feel the same thing about mental medicine, and that is psychology. So I think people who study how humans behave and how we tend to think and feel and behave, we go to specialists, and so those people tell us it's usually how the human behaves. But in the Christian worldview, just like in the physical, I don't say, my leg's broken. Well, who cares? You're an evolved chimp. At the Christian, I'd say, I'm here, I want to help you. And the Christian worldview, I'd say, I want to help you as well. So if we look at someone's inner world, their inner psychology, and think something is broken or wounded or sick, disease, and that kind of metaphor, then as the Christian, I would say I feel obligated when I can to help you. So there's a motivation that's a Christian worldview. The other thing is, that's a big thing for me. That's one of the reasons why I do it. And when I'm as a pastor, my job description doesn't ask me to do that at all. I do it because I feel Christian compulsion. So went to school for years and years and years because I felt if I had the gift to do it, I had to help. The other thing is, what I find very helpful in the Christian worldview is what we'll talk about later on today as well, and we've been talking about already, which is beliefs. Beliefs. So when the Christian says things like, when I say things like, that you ought to challenge your beliefs whether they're true or false or rational or irrational. Any pagan can do that, that's fine. But in the Christian worldview, I think I know what's true. So when I say things like to my people I counsel, or including myself, you ought to say things like, I love you to yourself. I'm convinced in a Christian worldview that's correct. I think the God of the universe wants us to say that. Because I go to Mark 12:31, and of course Deuteronomy 6:5, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so he doesn't say hate yourself. And see, a lot of Christians think that. They think it's a false humility. If I say I love myself, that's bad and sinful. I just disagree with them based on Scripture. So that's where, for me as a Christian, beliefs are tied very much into what I think a Christian ought to say about themselves and others. So beliefs, and I find that rubber meets the road all the time in my own worldview, in my own life, psychology. The other thing is when it comes to belief and behavior about other people. So my beliefs I form about other people. So for example, a person who's not a Christian, they might say it's okay to have to them it's a rational belief that this certain color skin is going to hurt you. As a Christian, I go, no, that's not true. That's false. They're not worse off. They're not inferior. That's called racism, and racism is sin. So therefore, I'm going to challenge that belief. That's about other people. Does that make sense? So for me, beliefs really can make a big distinction. Sometimes they're similar. I can sit next to a Muslim and a Hindu, and we have some similar beliefs, and that's fine. But there'll be times where we do part ways. But anyway, from the Christian worldview. So for me, those are a few things. So but in the worldview, I think God wants us to be whole and healthy as much as possible. 2, I think we have the moral obligation to try to help others when we can. 3, I think Christian worldview helps us love ourselves. 4th, I think has to do with true beliefs that are based on a Christian worldview. So to say all that in a few words on my declaration, I say, I think about myself what God thinks about me. That's why I put that in there for studies like this. And you don't have to find any of that persuasive. You can all disagree, but I find that persuasive. Does that help at all? So new creation, you're right. I don't think I'm an old, dirty, rotten sinner who just sits around and thinks of the past. I'm nobody. I'd say I disagree. I think that's an irrational, false belief. That was true when you were a dirty, rotten sinner, but you're not now. So we need to change that belief. We need to change. And I counter that all the time with people, and they might disagree, and that's fine. But I tell them I disagree with them. When I hear in counseling, they say mean things about themselves. I feel like I tell them I'm the false belief police, and I can't let you judge yourself like this. Have you read Romans 8:1? Therefore there is no what? Condemnation for those in Christ. So stop doing that. Stop. Oh, you don't know. Okay, I just disagree with you. I think Jesus, I think Paul, I think everybody would disagree with that belief. So for me, that's the new creation. You've got to live in the new. And two, I'll start preaching. I know, Jackie, get over it, David. But come on, thank you. And that is, I'm sick and tired of churches living in the past. They live in the Old Testament. They live in the Old Testament. They live as if every day they got to offer a brand new sacrifice. They treat these places like they're sacred, like this is a temple, like we have to reoffer the sacrifice every single time we fail. We have to go get rebaptized every single time. And Spirit, come on down. That's Old Testament all day long. That's not New Testament. I'm a dirty, rotten sinner just saved by God. That's not who you are anymore. Have you read the New Testament? You're not that anymore. No, you're not. You're a new creation. You are his righteousness in Christ. 2 Corinthians 5:21. You are his, I think it affects our beliefs very much. I think we ought to live like that. David, you think we don't sin? Of course we do sometimes, but you shouldn't. But that's not who I am anymore. It's not who I am. And that's why I fundamentally, little footnote for you recovering alcoholics, I fundamentally disagree with people saying, I'm an alcoholic. Really? Yeah, I've been sober for 28 years. Then you're not an alcoholic. That's not who you are anymore. I mean, do you understand that? Yeah, I am. No, I fundamentally disagree with that. You are what you do repeatedly. That's not who you are anymore. Okay, I gave you a quick Cliff's Notes on transactional analysis. Every single time we communicate to another human being, every time, whether it's verbal, text, email, it doesn't matter. Every time we communicate, Eric Byrne called that a transaction. So to analyze how we talk back and forth and communicate, he called that transactional analysis. And his key was to really learn how a person communicates in these patterns. He realized every single person reacts or responds or comes toward another human being from a particular conscious state, a set of pattern of beliefs and feelings and behaviors that we either got from our parents, that's taught. We take on a parental role, and you're not acting like your parent, and that minute you are your parent, which you really feel the first time you talk to your children, your literal children. You go, oh, it just came out like, that's exactly what my mom used to say. I haven't heard that in 28 years, and it just came out of me. And you know what I'm talking about? Have you felt that before? That's a classic example of the parent role, both nurturing and critical. The adult is the part of us that's constantly based on the moment. I have that on your chart here. There's one more handout on the table. If you forgot to bring yours or don't have it back at the table, feel free to get one. Or if you go on the website right now and go click Sermon Notes on the website or the app, Sermon Notes, you can see a digital version of the handout, Sermon Notes, hillchurchfamily.org. And then the child state is when you regress to the child. I thought about this the other day. It's a great example because I said this. It's right by your chart. To the left, it says the child is your emotional state. The second sentence, the third sentence is, when we are in the child ego state, we aren't just putting on an act, we are really being children. That's exactly right. So, for example, right now, if I said, David, act like a child, and I go, okay, go, you, I'm pretending to be a child. Might be an actor on a movie set, and they're rolling around on the ground. You're pretending to be a child. That's not an ego state. You're consciously deciding to pretend to be a child, which means your adult has decided to do a certain thing for a certain reason. But that's not what we're talking about. In these ego states, you are in the child state. It's called instantaneous regression. You are in your child like that when you're sad, angry, whatever. So on the bottom of that chart, bottom of page 5, the table 2, these are these descriptions, these adjectives of critical parent, nurturing parent, adult, free child, adaptive child. Okay. There's my quick review. Anything about that you want to talk about? Now, I've got a podcast on transactional analysis. I've got a little series I did on this. We can come back to that if you want to. But I wanted to focus on the wounded child for obvious reasons for the anxiety study. But is there anything about that you want to talk about? Okay, at the top of page 6. What I want to focus now is, since this is an anxiety study, on the wounded child. And so I have major bullet points if you're tracking with me. We learned true and false beliefs in childhood, and most of the beliefs in you right now came from childhood. Most of them did. Please let that sink in for a second. Just don't go too fast from that. Most of what you believe about people and the world you learned in childhood. Some within months of your existence. Some within years. Some you learned last week. But in general, most human beings learn what they believe. They say you're by the age of 6, most of what you believe about the world is set. Whether it's safe or dangerous, whether people can be trusted or not, whether you can have an impact on the world. That's why rescuing parents, no, 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 no. They teach kids they don't make a difference in the world because no matter they make a mess, it always gets cleaned up. And that can just really mess them up forever. Helicopter parents can really injure their children emotionally. So your child ego state is full of beliefs that you learn from childhood experiences and from your caretakers. That's where you learn them. Your experiences, and then you believe certain things about what happened. I touched that red thing over there on the stove. I don't know what it's called, but I touched it and it hurt. And so I formed the belief that red things cause pain. Caretakers may have taught you that. You see this thing here? See it's red? Don't touch it. And you go, okay. Some of you rebellious children went, okay, and you wouldn't touch it anyway. Just like every one of you do at the restaurant. Don't touch the plate, it's hot. And you go, you can't tell what to do. I hear you, Dustin. Amen? No? Therefore, your child holds many false beliefs. Now, of course, they can be true beliefs. You hold a lot of true beliefs that you got in your childhood. You do. We all do. We all have true beliefs. We also have a lot of false beliefs. So that's where a lot of it came from. And that's why a lot of times you might feel a bit crazy or dumb, but you're not. You might be crazy, but you're probably not crazy or you're not dumb if you cannot remember where every one of your beliefs came from. That's because you have to remember something 20, 30, 50, 60 years ago. And sometimes you don't need to know where it came from. But in general, I tell you what, if you're with me, I'm going to say, tell me about your child, tell me about your parents, tell me about your grandparents. The odds are very high. Now, number two, most parents aren't that good. Some of you can't, there you go. There's one person will say amen. Some of your parents just aren't. Now, you might not be able to, because of fear or shame or false beliefs, to admit that your parents failed you in some way. They might have tried their best, David. But imperfect people are imperfect what? Parents, period. Moreover, most parents had bad parents, and dysfunction passes down from family generation to family generation. I find this to be overwhelmingly common when I've counseled people for almost 20 years now. It is so difficult for people to admit that their parents weren't perfect. As soon as I ask, tell me about your mom or dad, the first thing that comes out of their mouth after they've noted something that happened badly as a child is, but they meant well, but they tried their best, and they worked so hard, and I go, that's wonderful. Did they do their best when they molested you? Did they do their best when they abandoned you? Well, no, but at the time, they tried their, like it's almost impossible. And that's because they spent all their life with a belief that they have to defend their parents' honor. And typically it's because children cannot, if you want to know why, you didn't ask me, but it's because actual children, don't have much at all. They don't have the emotional tools to deal with disappointment with their parents. Because, and I'll talk about this a lot more here in just a second, children have dependency needs on their parents. So children instinctively, think like cats look around when they hear something, or a dog. Deep instinctive in us is that we need a caretaker, a parent, to help us survive. And if they're wrong, we're in danger and we could die. So by our default stance, if I had a click, is our parents are right. They're right. One of my best guy friends for years, his parents grew mushrooms in their closet, drugs. And so I thought that was normal. They would leave him for days on end in their house. And so to this day, he's scared when he travels long distances by himself. He's a grown man. He's an intelligent, capable man with a good family. So if childhood affects that, when you're a kid, you think that's normal and that's right, as it were, and it changes the way you see the world. But most parents simply aren't that good. And if I'm just saying this to encourage you, maybe some of you like this doesn't feel discouraging because you feel anxious just thinking about it. But I'm going to try and encourage you by saying your parents probably weren't that good. They just probably weren't. Why is that? Because they're not robots unless they were Jesus incarnate. They were human beings like you are. Are you perfect? Besides, I won't give jokes, but no one is that I know of. I know I'm not, and so there we go. Well, they meant well. They could have meant well and still failed you miserably. Well, they tried the best they could. First off, that's false. No human being tries the best they can all the time. That's demonstrably false. No human being tries the best they can all the time. No one does. Jesus did, and he did it. You don't, and I don't, and your parents didn't. I say this because you need to, if you can't get to the point where you own that, a lot of the false beliefs you have in you right now, and sometimes unhealthy behavior you have in right now, is from a parent or caretaker, it'll be very difficult for you to heal. You will continue to own wounds or false beliefs that you don't need to own because they're not yours. You might have had a dad or a mom or an uncle who was very racist and they couldn't stand fill in the blank. And they made you a racist because every single time you watch the news, mom and dad said some smart aleck racist account. And you might like, yeah, part of me really thinks that too, but I know that's bad. But they tried their best. But that was racist. That was horrible. Yeah. But they tried it was their culture. That's racist. It's horrible. Yeah, but his dad was that way too. See, as soon as you start owning that is bad, and he taught me that, versus now I can never ever love my dad again. No, no, no. It just means and therapy works wonders. That's his belief, not mine. Mom thought that blank, blank, blank. Mom thought that. But I don't want to think that anymore. I don't want to think that anymore. You don't have to. And so this is oftentimes in my counseling, I will spend some time there. Not to beat up on parents, good heavens, just to own reality. Reality, and I became an adult. The old man I am years ago, I started loving the word reality. I want to hug it. Like what's real versus what I think it ought to have been or expect it to be. What's real? And the reality is they failed me in several ways. I've told my own children, half joking, but I'm serious. I've told them many times, I'm doing the best job I can and pay for your therapy. And they laugh. I go, I'm serious. Well, you're great, Dad. Thank you so much. But it's some way in some way that I don't know of, it's some way some of my own dysfunctions, my own lack of character is rubbing off on you. And I don't like that. And nevertheless, I am most of the time doing the best I can, but that's not good enough because I'm not Jesus. It's not best. It's good enough that I can do, but the good enough I can do may not be best for you. You might grow up later and realize, I don't want to be like my dad in this regard or my mom in this way, hypothetically with her. And you go, great, and I'm going to encourage you. I remember when Hayden was real little, he was probably 6 years old or so, and 6, 7 years old, and he was in the truck or car where we were driving down the road, and he looked at me, he said, Daddy, what if when I grow up, I'm smarter than you are? And he had a little smirk like, ha ha. And I looked at him without skipping a beat. I looked at him and I said, I absolutely hope you are. And he went, he was really baffled by that. And I looked at him and I said, I'm serious. He'd still look baffled. I said, son, I hope you're better than me in every single way. Every way. And it didn't compute. I know because a 6-year-old, why? Because his dad can walk on water and knows everything, is omniscient, which I know is true, but I'm kidding. I know that's false, but I know from his perspective he thinks that. But that's my point. I'm trying my best to say, no, no. I want you to be better in all the way because I know parents, they're not that good. And some are really bad. Some are really bad parents. Some of you had really bad parenting. Some of your caretakers were horrible. Okay, let me say this, and I meant to add this to the handout, and it's not on yours. So this should have been point number 3. But I'm going to come back to this a little bit, but this should be point number 3. Because it's under the parents aren't that good. And it's this. What you and I are supposed to learn from our childhood is how to, I'm convinced of this, John Townsend's right. We're supposed to be in childhood, learn how to develop character. I would add Christian character to deal with reality. So that is to say, what parenting is supposed to be, and this is my whole parenting philosophy. Parenting is supposed to be a part-time job, temporary job, and it's temporary, where I train my children to develop Christian character to deal with reality. I want them to have the emotional and mental and spiritual and physical intelligence to deal with the reality that's going to face them when they're not under my constant care. I'm supposed to develop character in them. And so what's supposed to happen is, as they literally grow up, as they mature and their body gets bigger and older, I slowly let go of my moral obligations to come to their rescue and give them their needs met. I'm absolutely come to it when they're babies. They're just helpless. It's funny, scientists will tell you that human babies are the most advanced and helpless infants of any mammal on the planet. And it's true. Of course, they're far, far, far superior than every other mammal that ever gets born, but they don't hop out running around like a giraffe or some, or calf or whatever. So they're pure need. Everything about a baby's need. They'll die on it. They have to be hugged and held. But as he or she grows up, and I feel as a parent, as a Christian parent, I have a moral obligated to help meet those needs. As Hayden grows up, as he grew up, I took my hand off, as it were, more and more. You go find the food in the cupboard. You learn how to turn the microphone on. I can teach you how to do the microwave or the oven or the whatever it might be. You learn how to start putting that on your schedule to do your own homework. You learn how to keep the schedule. And as it goes up, now it's time to get a job. But Daddy, I'm only 7. I'll say, get over it. Life is, I'm kidding. So he gets older. As soon as, Elaine's like, no, he's too young. No, as soon as he can work, not just because I did that. I started working when I was 14 in Mississippi. But I said, just a little bit. We're easing him into it. That's just responsibility and working for someone else. And so he did, little by little. He worked at restaurants, and first he did a busboy cleaning up tables, and he up. So he learned how in the workplace, and then now he's had 3 or 4 or 5 jobs in the last. He's 17 years old, and so more and more I can teach him. But what happens is this was supposed to happen. The older he gets, the more I have switched from his literal parent, and he's the literal child, to adult to adult. I'm supposed to switch. That seesaw's supposed to come like this. And then I become an advisor. I'm a wise friend who wants to help him when he wants it. And that's it. Does that mean I disown him? No, I'm still his literal biological father. But in the ego states, I do not come at him as my child anymore, as he matures, as he grows up. Same thing with Julia. I'm not, when he gets older and older, I'll start seeing him. He's a man now. And so what do men talk to the men? I don't see Brandon coming, he's my little baby boy. He's not. Brandon is not my child, and I'm not his child. And I don't ever treat Brandon like that because he's not. I'm going to do the same thing with Hayden. The older he's almost there, but he's getting more and more an adult. And that's hard for parents. Some never get over it because they never stop gripping. They never stop seeing, that's still my baby. She's 54. She's still my baby. And I can tell you think that because of the way you treat her. And that's why she don't really like you. That's why she's very anxious when you come over for Thanksgiving, because she knows she'll never make you happy. And you're going to point out everything you don't like about the meal, or how it's dusty, or you hadn't vacuumed, or how you're failing your children. You never stop being that parent, or literal parent, or critical parent in her life. And that's why she don't relate to you. That's why he doesn't call you much. Do you know? That's why he doesn't call you, because you nag him all the time. And he's too old for that. He was told as soon as he graduated, he's over that. So the problem is now he just doesn't listen. Yeah, you don't understand. Your role has drastically changed. Then what happens is, and I've met many, many adults this way, and then what happens is they feel such panic on the inside because that role and dynamic has changed, and deep inside they're like, and who am I now? If my child doesn't listen to my advice and doesn't do what I say, my child state gets activated. And I'm like, well, then now who am I now? What am I to the world, to this child? Well, then what am I supposed to do? Just sit there and stare at them? They get mad about it. They don't know how to relate to someone as an adult. They only want to keep that parent-child relationship. And as the child wants to be an adult, the child will bucket and bucket and bucket. Thanks, Mom, but no, Mom. And eventually sometimes they just say the relationship just fades away because the child's like, I can't do this anymore. I'm a grown man now, a grown woman. I'm not supposed to do that anymore. So those dynamics happen. That's what's supposed to happen. That's one major dynamic of parent-child relationship. Another thing that's supposed to happen is we're supposed to learn as children. Let me say it this way. So as a child, I was supposed to learn how to gain more responsibility for myself. Now, I actually did that because my parents divorced, and my mom and I were on our own, and food stamps. I had to buck up real fast and work jobs and go to school nonstop, and I worked hard from 16 all the way to whatever. So I always had multiple jobs, went to school. No one gave me handouts. I mean, I worked my mom did too. We had 2 or 3 jobs. And so that was thrust upon me, as it were. I could have rebelled and say, forget this, I'm going off and doing drugs and go live in Chicago, I'm scared. Wherever, California, I can do whatever I want. But I chose with a Christian to say, no, let's do the right thing, work hard, God's going to provide. And he did. He did, praise God, he did. So that was thrust upon me. Some people don't have a thrust upon them. Okay, you're supposed to learn those skill sets and deal with reality. Some skill sets I didn't learn at all because I didn't have great parents. I had good parents, not great parents. And though they tried their best, and I don't think all that stuff. I go, no, yeah, they're imperfect people. Another thing that's supposed to happen is not only do I gain responsibility for my own life, I'm supposed to start what we call internalizing beliefs that they have in me. I'm supposed to do that, but they're supposed to be true. They're supposed to be right and healthy. So, for example, and I'm going to give you a for example because we could spend a long time on this, and I won't, because these are by far the 2 most common beliefs that you and I were supposed to internalize that most people didn't. So in my counseling experience, here are the top 2. I love top lists because it saves time for me. So here are the top two things. In my experience in counseling, most people were supposed to learn internalize from parents they didn't get. And so they never got this skill set, this emotional intelligence. You ready for it? No extra charge for it. Big build up. It's this big a deal. It took me years of counseling and research to get this so simple. And I'll make it simpler. One has to do with the past and one has to do with the future. So in the past, when you were a literal child and you went up to your parents and you were sad about something that happened at school, happened earlier that day, happened 5 minutes ago or 5 months ago, what you're supposed to have learned is a nurturing parent was supposed to come to your rescue and say, I'm so very sorry. They were supposed to learn validation, that your feelings of sadness, regret, disappointment, hatred, which is just a feeling, or negative rage, those negative feelings, you were supposed to have received validation, that those emotions are real, that they matter, and I'm so very sorry you're feeling that. I have empathy for you. You matter to me, and your emotions matter to me, and that matters. It matters. Most of us learn the opposite, which we call in counseling discounting. You don't matter. Buck up. Shut up. What is wrong with you? I'll show you. So you want something to cry about? You don't know what my childhood was like. And that's called discounting. It's the exact opposite of what you and I are supposed to have learned. You're supposed to have learned validation. You matter, your emotion. Empathy, validation. And the process of that we're supposed to have learned, once we get validated, I'm so sorry you feel sad about that. So here, Jen, is what this is what you're supposed to have heard. I'm so sorry you're hurting. Can I help you grieve? Or you're already crying, go, I'm so sorry you're crying. I'm so proud of you for crying. Please keep doing it. I'm so proud of you. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. God designed us, back to worldview. God designed us to grieve. He's so proud of you. I'm proud of you. Keep crying and hugging you. There's a safety that's built up of the past. I'm sorry. I have empathy, validation, and grief. And then what's supposed to happen is that we do that because we have a lot of loss in childhood. My favorite weed fell down. We think it's a beautiful flower. It's a weed. Go get more. What are you crying about? There's 400 dandelions out there. And they feel so shameful. And then all we learn is to feel bad about negative emotions, how to buck up. You didn't learn how to buck up. I learned how to deal with it. No, you didn't. I learned how to get over it. No, you didn't. What you learned was denial. You learned denial. You learned that your feelings don't matter. And many of you, and probably in this still room, and I know people listening on my podcast, they absolutely struggle with this right now. This is, the top two, they're tied. This is the number one thing that has to do with the past. Many of you in this room still do not know how to grieve to this day because in childhood, you did not internalize a nurturing parent voice that you were supposed to have internalized that you never received. You never heard, I'm so sorry, baby. One time, Hayden was in a football game. He played, and he was always almost always the shortest kid, almost always, because he came in the very last cutoff day. September 1 was the cutoff day. So, for example, he's 17, he's about to graduate. So every single grade, he's the youngest kid in the class, if that makes sense to you. So in football, he was always like, baby, I'm sorry. I know when you hit puberty, I'm telling you, you're going to be a little bit taller than Pappy. That's Glenn, his father-in-law. I'm teasing him. He's 5'4", 6". I said, baby, you're going to be taller. Trust me, you're going to, And he was, because he's just little, he's always younger. And then all of a sudden he sprouted up. But he was on a football team early on, a game, and he couldn't get the ball. Something happened. He's big on defense. It dropped or something. He was really upset. And he wanted to have the big plays. And I'll never forget this. He has his football gear on and whatever, and we're sitting on the field, and I have my work clothes, khakis and whatever. It was through a private school where Elaine was the head of school. And the team clears off and then go, and they're all the game's over, and they lost the game. And Hayden comes over here and he's kind of, and Hayden was never a big crier. He was a little kid. He's never been that much, but I want to make jokes. But anyway, he's never been much, but we've always encouraged it. But he came around and he came near me. He just kind of threw his head in my stomach, and I just held him. And I said, don't cry. Everyone's looking at you. I didn't say that. I said, just joking, loser. I think I got him on my knee or held him, and I told him, baby, I said, baby, now this isn't a story about how awesome David is. I'm saying this is what's supposed to have happened. I'm proud of this moment. And I had many moments like this. I gave him a hug, and he just put his head, he was crying, and I kept saying, it's okay to cry. I'm so proud of you. I'm so glad you're crying now. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be sad. And he cried, and I patted him. I said, I love you. I'm proud of you. You're my son. I love you so very much. I'm sorry you're sad. It's okay to be sad. And I repeated it on a loop until he finally dried up. And I thought, I don't care. I'm about 3 hours. I don't give a rip. We're going to stay right here until his crying's done. I don't care where. I don't care. I don't care if it's raining, pouring. Because I know in the moment, I need him to internalize this moment for himself forever. And after he tried up, and I waited, are you okay? Do you want to go on? Do you want to stay right here? We can stay here. He goes, I'm okay. And we walked on. And every single time every time Julia starts crying, I said, baby, I don't just, anyway, I do the same process. I'm so very sorry you're sad. I don't care what it is they're sad about. Tell me about it. And if I hear one word about how they I know this is silly or whatever, they don't do that much because I fussed at them so much. Stop saying that. Stop judging yourself. Quit. And so that they stop early on. Every once in a while. But see, they learn that's learned behavior from other people at school. Every single time, some of y'all, as soon as you start crying, I'm sorry. What are you sorry about for being sad? Because you believe you should be sorry, because you should be ashamed of yourself for being sad, because you learned that from a parent. And that's false nonsense. It's so unhealthy. And by the way, it's unchristian. I leave that one for last because many of you struggle with constant shame and guilt. I know I shouldn't. But all I'm saying is God He doesn't want us to feel guilty about that. He just doesn't want us to. You're supposed to have internalized how to have validation from sadness and grieve. So, David, now am I just screwed for life? No, you're not. You can learn those skill sets right now. It's called reparent yourself. That's the main number one thing about the past. The main number one thing, the other thing we're supposed to have learned that most people didn't learn is about what to do with the future. You're supposed to have learned when you start getting scared about the future, anxious, or the word is worry, I start obsessing about what might happen. You were supposed to have heard a nurturing parent say, I'm so sorry you're anxious, but you know what? I bet no matter what happens, you can handle it. No matter what happens, you can handle it. You are capable. You are capable. You're strong, you're smart, you're capable. Whatever it is, I bet you're going to handle it, whatever it is. I bet whatever it is, honey, you can make it through this. So let's think about this for a second, honey schnugger dumplings. What might happen if you didn't prepare for that test? Well, I blah, blah. Okay, then what? Well, I blah, blah. Well, then what? I blah, blah. Okay. Would you die? No. Would someone? No. Well, what happened? What's the worst case scenario? Well, I guess the worst case scenario is they would just laugh at me. And you think the kids would get over it? Yeah. Would they ever see something else they'd laugh at in someone else? Yeah. Then what would happen? Nothing. You help them process those fears and realize at the end of all these fears, guess what? It's still themselves going, I can handle that. If that's the worst case scenario, I can handle that. Most people I've ever met never learned the skill set how to validate feelings about the future and the nurturing parent voice belief that says, I can handle it. And then the capacity to the problem solve, the problem, if that happened, I would do this. If that happened, I would do this. If that happened, I would do this. And that's why so many people cannot grieve and so many people worry all the time. They never learn that capacity. Your parents, if they failed you in one of these areas right now, today, on whatever today's date is, the 15th, I'm telling you, at some level you struggle with this. And so let's work backwards. If you have a hard time crying or grieving or feeling sorry or empathy for yourself, I'm telling you, your parents taught you incorrectly. They failed you here. If it makes you mad when someone says, I'm sorry, don't have pity on me, I guarantee you your parents failed you. What is wrong with pity? Have you read the New Testament? Pity, of course you should have pity on people. That makes me sad and it makes me angry. It makes me angry that so many people are hurting so badly because someone taught them false nonsense. It makes me angry for them. It makes me angry for you. It makes me angry for me that little wounded children still never learn that. It just makes me angry. Son of David, have mercy on me. Mark 10, mercy, pity, compassion. Yes, we are supposed to have that. What's going to happen tomorrow? Well, I don't know what's going to, and then I'm going to freak out, and then blah, blah. Oh, baby, I'm so very sorry. I bet you can handle that, though. Many of you struggle with worry. You just obsess up all the time about, but if I don't get that job, and if I don't get that so-and-so, and because your parents failed you. They just failed you. You were supposed to have learned that you can handle it, because you can. David, you think it's just me alone and not Jesus? No, 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 no. I'm not talking about theological. Of course it's you and Jesus, of course. What I mean is, you can make it. You have the resilience that God will give you to survive that thing you're scared of. Unless you're actually going to be killed. And that's the case, he's got you anyway. Because we all die. Now, I'm going to pause there. Let you take a deep breath. Would you like to say anything about this? Any question or comments about that? Yes, Miss Bonnie.
Is there a difference between handling it and dealing with it?
Good. Is there a difference between handling it and dealing with it? I know what you mean by that because we've met, and so I don't think so. I would ask the person, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? So when I use the word, it's a very good question. Seriously. So if I ever say the word deal, I usually don't say deal with it. And the reason I tend to prefer the word, and this isn't like a sin, I'm just saying I prefer to use the word process it. Because in my experience, deal with it, handle it has a negative connotation of shame. Like buck up. Now, that's my background. Maybe that's not your background. Maybe you go, no, I think process when I think deal. Then we just deal with language. So I prefer to use the word process the feelings than I would deal with the feelings. That's me. Working through it. That's why I think the process, working through it. So if that's what you mean by that, then the answer is, they mean the same thing. So just deal with it because you can't change it. Yeah. I would still say I prefer to use the word anytime. Well, also, even the way you said it, like deal with it, you shook your head. Because even like the body language tells me, it suggests to me that you don't mean process it and go through the emotions and allow the grief to come out. And if there's any hint of that, then I would say that I disagree. Because that's what healthy people process those emotions. We don't want to stuff it. We don't want to deny it. We don't want to make fun of it. We don't want to have shame about it. Ever. Yes, sir. Thank you for that, Bonnie. You're a proud crybaby. But I know how to box. Good. You're a crying boxer. Good. Yeah, it took me years to get better at crying. I'm much better now. It took me practice. And I tell people in counseling, I tell them exactly what I did to get better at it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and a boxer. He does box. So don't make fun of him. He'll cry and he'll punch you. I'm kidding. Anybody else? Does this resonate with anybody in the room, what I'm talking about? The capacity, I see some nodding heads. Yeah. I usually hear this too. So David, the goal is just to beat up on my parents? No. Frankly, I care, but I don't care about your parents. Your parents aren't here in the room of counseling. This isn't for your parents, this is for you. I'm showing you a mirror of reality. In reality, your parents failed you here. You were supposed to have learned that. Well, now what do? Well, you learn how to do it. Now. I can teach you now how to learn things you were supposed to learn in childhood. That's good news. That's really good news. We can learn it now. But I'm not 6 anymore. Isn't that amazing? You're not 6. You might be 66, and you can still learn it. It just feels so unnatural. I agree. Doesn't feel right. I agree. I don't really believe that yet. I agree. Yep, that's right. It's going to take some practice. You've been believing something false all of your life, probably. You didn't get here overnight. But you can disabuse yourself. You can change it. Yes, sir, Carl? Right. So it doesn't just affect, having those beliefs or false beliefs, doesn't just affect your children, it can affect your grandchildren. Right. Anybody you then parent. That's right. Absolutely right. That's right, brother. Nieces, nephews, we pass down that dysfunction. The benefit of the doubt is people don't mean to. Most people are simply ignorant. They don't realize what's even going on. They've never once read a book on themselves, ever. They don't know anything about beliefs or child. And so they just pass down. That's right. It can affect anybody. Yeah, James? I understand. Thank you for that. So I'll struggle with that because your dad taught you, if there's some problem, snap out of it, get over it, and so forth. And and your older brother. And you're the opposite. Which is, let's cry. Come here, baby. Yeah, that's right. You're the nurturing parent. Yeah, thank you. So I struggle with that, her being a nurturing parent, because I want them to be strong. To which, if we were meeting a one-on-one, but this is great. Thank you so much for sharing this. This is fantastic. To which I would say is, I really disagree with your definition of strong. I define strength psychologically and resilience, the capacity to keep going even when you don't want to. So it involves courage, but it's more like the Greek word long suffering. The capacity to get back up when you fail, the capacity to get back up and get going. Because you've processed the emotions to say, boy, that was horrible, but I made it. That's strength to me. Strength is not denial. Because all we're doing is teaching people that we should feel ashamed for the sadness. It does not stop us from being sad. That's so, I've said it over, I'll keep saying that, because all that is teaching us and teaching our children when we say that is, you should be ashamed of yourself for being needy and sad right now. It doesn't make them go, okay, I'm not sad anymore. No, they just stuff it and feel ashamed for it. But God designed us to feel sad, which means you'll feel sadness forever. They'll just never let it come out because they feel so ashamed. They hear their dad and their voice going, buck up, get over it. You know, I'll show you some African starving kids. And they'll just, yeah. They're children in this world. They go hungry all the time. Well, mail it to them. Yeah. So we could, so literal parents in this room who are like literal, we have literal children like have Hayden and Joy. I'm an actual parent. Well, what if you've blown it? Own it as quickly as you can. Confess that to them as fast as you can. I mean, today, call them. I blew it. I realize now, and if you don't realize this, you disagree, then you won't do this. But if you do, you own it as quickly as possible. I blew it. I realize now, no, Dad, it's okay. You tried your best. Please let me finish. I was wrong that I ever said this to you or behaved this way towards you. That was unhealthy. That was wrong. It was the best I knew at the time, but what I knew was incorrect, and I should not have passed it down. I'm very sorry. The exact opposite is true. You have every right to feel ... I'm sorry that I taught you how to worry. I was always fussing about so-and-so, what might happen. That was wrong with me. That was unhealthy. I'm sorry I did that. At the time, I didn't know better. I do know better now, and it's never going to happen again. You're never going to have those words from my mouth again. That's all we can do is the best we can in the moment with the knowledge we have. That's it.
Right now.
Take care of this right now, I would.
Okay.
Literal parents do, because why? Because every second you're building character. And they're listening very carefully and they're watching very carefully. Every second, all the time.